For nearly 30 years, the world believed 5 women simply disappeared. Some whispered that we had drowned in the storm. Others claimed we ran away in shame. A few said we were cursed. None of them knew the truth. My name is Grace. I am 70 years old now. And today, for the first time, I am breaking a silence that nearly destroyed me. What I'm about to tell you is not a story about lost faith. It is a story about faith being weaponized, about evil hiding behind holy words, and about how 5 young women were forced to choose between obedience and survival. If you believe truth deserves a voice, stay with me, because once you hear this, you will never look at silence the same way again. I was always the quiet one. As a child, while others spoke, I watched. While others trusted easily, I noticed details. My mother used to say I had eyes that could see between moments. I didn't understand what she meant back then. I do now. I entered the convent at 16, by choice. No one forced me. No one pressured me. I wanted a life of meaning. A life where each day had purpose, discipline, and devotion. And in the beginning, I found exactly that. The convent stood on a hill overlooking a small town where everyone knew everyone. Its stone walls were cold in winter, warm in summer, and always silent in the early mornings when fog wrapped around the chapel like a veil. There were only 5 of us. 5 women, 1 rhythm, 1 faith. Mother Agnes was our guide. Firm, disciplined, but deeply fair. She believed rules protected the soul. She also believed love must guide discipline. Sister Martha was the eldest. Her hands carried decades of service, and her bread fed half the town. She believed feeding people was prayer made visible. Sister Eleanor lived in books, scripture, history, philosophy. She believed knowledge was another way to worship. Sister Joy, her name fit her perfectly. Children followed her like sunlight. Laughter came easily to her. And then there was Sister Sarah, barely 19, new, gentle, shy. She arrived with eyes full of trust. I didn't know then how fragile that trust was. For years our life moved like clockwork: prayer, work, silence, service. The town respected us, trusted us. And then everything changed. It happened quietly. Too quietly. Our longtime spiritual guide was transferred. He had been kind, almost grandfatherly. His absence left a space we didn't realize could become dangerous. The replacement arrived one autumn morning. Father Michael. He was tall, charismatic. His voice filled the chapel effortlessly. People admired him immediately. Everyone did. Everyone except me. I couldn't explain it at first. Just a feeling, a tension beneath his words. At first, it was nothing obvious. Lingering glances, questions during confession that felt unnecessary. Hands resting on shoulders just a second too long. Small things, but small things repeated become patterns. I wasn't alone in noticing. Sarah began avoiding him. Joy stopped laughing as easily. Silence crept into our halls. Then Mother Agnes fell ill, severely. For weeks she was confined to her bed, leaving the convent without its anchor. That's when the shadow stepped fully inside. Father Michael began visiting often, always with reasons, always with authority. One evening, I walked into the library and froze. Sarah was cornered between a bookshelf and him. His grip on her wrist was tight enough to whiten her skin. Her eyes met mine, wide, terrified. I said nothing. But that night, sleep abandoned me. Fear has a way of whispering louder in silence. The next day, I spoke to Eleanor. At first, she said nothing. Shock wrapped around her like stone. Then she asked one question. Do we have proof? That word changed everything. Because once you ask it, you cannot unsee what you begin to collect. We watched. We listened. We remembered. And what we discovered was not isolated. It was deliberate, calculated. He used authority as a weapon, faith as a shield. Sarah was targeted the most. She was young, obedient, terrified of disobedience. One night I found her shaking in the hallway, her face marked red. "No one will believe me," she whispered. I tried to tell Mother Agnes. She accused me of impure thoughts, told me to pray, told me to repent. That was the moment I understood something terrible. The walls meant to protect us could also imprison us. As Mother Agnes grew weaker, Father Michael grew bolder. Joy became withdrawn. Martha watched silently, helpless. Eleanor started writing everything down. Dates, times, words. And then the worst night came. Sarah stumbled into my room, barely standing. He had told her obedience was holiness. That refusal was sin. That silence was salvation. Something inside me broke. I knew then that faith does not mean submission to cruelty. True faith demands resistance. The next morning, I did something dangerous. I left the convent. I went to the bishop. I waited for hours. When I finally spoke, my hands shook, but my voice didn't. I told him everything. He listened. Then he doubted. He warned me about scandal, about reputation, about discretion. 2 nights later, Father Michael arrived furious. The bishop had told him everything, including my name. Soon after, an order came. I was to be transferred, isolated, silenced, punished for speaking. That was the moment I realized something irreversible. No one was coming to save us. We had only one option left: escape. That night, 5 women sat whispering in the cellar. Fear wrapped around us like cold stone. "If we run," Eleanor said, "they'll say we're guilty. And if we stay," Joy replied softly, "we die inside." Martha spoke last. "I have served God 60 years, she said. "If leaving saves my sisters, then leaving is my prayer." The decision was made. But how do 5 women with no money, no contacts, and no freedom escape a place built to keep them contained? That answer came from someone unexpected. A delivery man. A farmer. A quiet man with grief in his eyes and compassion in his hands. And with his help, we began planning a night that would erase us from the world. But before we could run, we had to accept something terrifying. Once we climbed those walls, there would be no go. Fear changes the way time moves. In the days leading up to our escape, hours stretched endlessly, yet nights vanished in seconds. Every footstep echoed louder. Every door creak felt like discovery. We became actors in our own prison, performing normality while preparing to disappear. We prayed together. We worked together. We smiled when required. But beneath it all, our hearts were already running. The plan was simple only on paper. A stormy night. A weakened section of the rear wall. A rope ladder hidden in the bushes. A truck waiting beyond the road. Simple plans are the most dangerous. We gathered only what was essential. No habits. No symbols. No items that could tie us to who we had been. I folded my rosary once, then left it behind. Letting go felt like tearing skin. The night arrived with thunder. Rain fell violently, as if the sky itself wanted to wash us away. At midnight, when the bell struck 12, we stood in the cellar one last time. 5 women. 5 shadows. No prayers spoken aloud, only silent pleas pressed into our chests. We removed our habits slowly, carefully, folding them as if they were bodies. That fabric had been our identity. Now it was our past. When we stepped outside, the rain soaked us instantly. Cold bit into our bones. The garden that once felt holy now felt hostile, every step sinking into mud. Joy threw the rope over the wall first. I climbed ahead, hands shaking, muscles screaming. The stones were slick. My breath came in sharp gasps. One by one, we followed. Sarah slipped once, nearly falling backward. I grabbed her wrist just in time. Martha was last. For a terrifying moment, she hung there, struggling. Then she pulled herself up. Her eyes shone, not with fear, but triumph. And then we ran. 5 women running through rain like fugitives. The truck waited exactly where promised. We didn't speak. We just climbed in. The engine started. And with that sound, our old lives ended. We hid under a tarp in the back, bodies pressed together, shivering, not just from cold, but from the realization that if we were found, there would be no mercy. Every bump jolted my heart. Every passing light made me flinch. After what felt like eternity, the truck stopped. We were led into an abandoned barn miles away. It smelled of hay and dust and safety. Mattresses waited. Blankets. Water. Kindness feels unreal when you've lived in fear. That night, we slept. Not deeply. Not peacefully. But without being hunted. The next morning, we learned the truth. Our escape had been discovered. The town was in chaos. Father Michael told them we were unstable, rebellious, corrupt. The police were searching. Our names were being spoken with suspicion. We were no longer women who fled danger. We were women who betrayed God. That is how lies work. They invert reality. We left within days, hidden inside a delivery truck bound for another state. New names were chosen. New stories memorized. I stopped being Grace. I became Linda. Saying my new name felt like lying to myself. But survival demands sacrifice. The months that followed blurred together. We stayed hidden in a quiet inn far from Havenwood. The owners asked no questions. Their silence was a gift. Still, fear followed us. Every knock at the door, every unfamiliar face, every priest we passed, we rehearsed our story endlessly. Who we were, where we came from, why we were together. Lies became muscle memory. Eventually, we moved again. This time to a city where anonymity was possible. Work came slowly. Factory sewing, long hours, low pay. But it was ours. For the first time, we earned our survival. At night, we prayed, not with ritual, but honesty. God, we said, if you are still listening, we need you here. Years passed. Then tragedy arrived quietly. Martha suffered a stroke in the kitchen one morning. By the time we found her, she was gone. We buried her under a name that wasn't hers. No habit. No hymn. No recognition of who she truly was. I remember standing at her grave thinking, even in death, we are hiding. Loss became a constant companion after that. Eleanor grew weaker over time. She never stopped writing. Notes, dates, memories. One night, she took my hand. Promise me something, she said. When it's safe, tell the truth. I didn't answer, because I didn't know if I ever could. She passed months later. Then joy. Heart failure. She went quietly in her sleep. By then, only Sarah and I remained. Sarah built a new life. A family, children. Laughter returned to her eyes. She begged me not to tell. I can't carry that past again, she said. I understood. So I carried it alone. For decades, I watched Father Michael's name rise. Promotions, honors, praise. While we hid like ghosts, anger rotted inside me. Guilt followed closely. For running. For surviving. For staying silent. Every night, I dreamed of walls. Then one day, I found Eleanor's notebook again. Inside were names, dates, evidence, and something worse. Proof that others knew. They knew and chose silence. That was when fear shifted into purpose. Years later, a newspaper article caught my eye. A new priest had been assigned to Havenwood. Young, progressive, known for protecting the vulnerable. Something inside me stirred. Hope or recklessness. I returned. After nearly 30 years. I walked into the town that believed I was dead. And for the first time since the storm, I spoke my real name. Walking back into Havenwood felt like stepping into a life that no longer belonged to me. The streets were smaller than I remembered. The buildings older. The hill where the convent once stood now held a cultural center. Its stone walls repainted, its past politely erased. But some places never forget. I stood outside the parish office for nearly 10 minutes before knocking. My hands trembled, not from fear alone, but from the weight of everything I carried. When the door opened, I spoke before doubt could stop me. "My name is Grace," I said. "I lived in the convent that disappeared in 1979. The young priest's eyes widened. Everyone knew the story. 5 nuns. A storm. A mystery. He invited me inside, confusion etched across his face. I could see disbelief forming, but not dismissal. That difference mattered. We sat, and I began. I told him everything. Not dramatically. Not emotionally, just truth. The arrival of Father Michael. The fear. The abuse. The escape. As I spoke, his posture changed. Skepticism gave way to tension, tension to anger, anger to grief. When I placed Eleanor's notebook on the table, the room fell silent. Page after page. Dates, names, incidents, warnings ignored. He read until his hands shook. This changes everything," he whispered. For the first time in nearly 3 decades, someone inside the church believed me. The investigation moved quietly at first. Carefully. Because truth is dangerous when it threatens power. Records were examined. Old letters uncovered. Former parish members questioned. Then something devastating surfaced. A letter written years before our escape. A warning. Someone had raised concerns about Father Michael's behavior. The response written in the margin read, "Handled internally." I stared at those words until my vision blurred. They knew. They had always known. When the bishop overseeing the case met me, I expected defensiveness. Instead, he knelt. "I am sorry," he said, "for failing you, for protecting the institution instead of the innocent." That moment broke something open inside me. I wasn't invisible anymore. When Father Michael was finally confronted, he denied everything, called me unstable, bitter, a liar seeking attention. But lies collapse when truth is documented. More voices came forward. Former novices, women from the community, even men who had once trained under him. Stories echoed ours. Different details, same pattern. The town fractured. Some defended him fiercely. Others wept openly. Justice is rarely neat. When the decision came, it wasn't perfect, but it was real. He was stripped of his title, removed from service, silenced at last. No prison, no public apology. But his power was gone. The man who had ruled through fear now lived in obscurity. And for the first time, I slept without dreaming of walls. I didn't feel triumph, only grief. For Martha, for Eleanor, for Joy, for the young women we never met. Healing is not celebration. It is quiet acceptance. I stayed. Not in the church, but in the old convent building. With others who carried stories like mine. We turned that place into something new. A center for women who needed safety. Voices. Legal help. Healing. Sarah, my Sarah, returned years later, after her children were grown. She stood in the garden and cried. "If we hadn't escaped," she whispered, "I wouldn't have this life." That was when I finally forgave myself. People often ask me if I still consider myself a nun. I tell them this: faith is not obedience to cruelty. Faith is courage when silence is easier. Faith is choosing truth, even when it costs everything. I broke vows that night. But I kept something far more sacred. My soul. If you are listening to this story and carrying something heavy, if you've been silenced, if you've been told no one will believe you, I believe you. And silence protects only the guilty. It took me 28 years to speak. But when I did, I wasn't alone anymore. Truth has a voice. And sometimes, it sounds like yours. If this story moved you, write, "I believe," in the comments. Subscribe for more stories that deserve to be heard. Your voice matters more than you know.